going to tell you a little bit about the adventurous Compagnies des Indes, the French East India Company. But we're going to start with a really nice cup of tea. I've picked one of my favorite teas. It's from a French company called Frère. They make beautiful, gorgeous, aromatic tisane, green tea, black tea, beautiful blends. Today I'm going to make Nuit à Versailles. This one has green tea, flower petals, and bergamot, kiwi, orange petals, violet, and peach. Was in 1692 that Louis XIV granted the Dutchman François d'Almame the exclusive privilege in France to buy and sell tea, coffee, chocolate, and sorbets. Sorbets are like granitas, delightful ices made from pureed ice or fruits, perfumed with rose, violet, or lemon. So Damon Frère is a company that has been trading in tea for centuries, and in my opinion, they're one of the very finest teas in the world. Beautiful, beautiful aroma from this tea. And yes, they do make loose tea. I've just got the bags this time. And you can see that's turning a beautiful light green color. So as we let that steep, I will tell you about the East Indies. Now that should steep for about 3 to 4 minutes, which it has now. So I'm going to pour a beautiful cup. In our porcelain, also coming from the Indes, the East Indies. The trade in products and, yes, people across the Eurasian plateau has connected Asia to Europe via the famed routes since antiquity. the centuries, these land and maritime routes were affected by economic, environmental, and political factors. Routes were named for the goods they carried, such as the Incense Road, the Silk Road, the Spice Road, and the Porcelain Route. Among the many goods that made their way both east and west along these routes were jade, Chinese lacquers, muslins and cottons, precious stones and woods, amber, camphor, Indian musks, Ceylon pearls, Arabic coffee, ivory, plums, pears, pomegranates, salt, wild animals, Mediterranean glass and corals, furs, weapons, works of art, and precious metals. Goods traveled thousands of miles over desert by camel, through the Tibetan plateau by caravan, and over the sea by caravel, and eventually larger ships in great fleets. These routes made possible commercial interaction for diplomacy, religion, science, art, and touched almost every facet of people's daily lives. To combat the monopoly of the caliphates over the trade routes, the Portuguese established the first maritime routes from Europe to the east in the 15th century, prompting advances in shipbuilding, sailing, and navigation. The Dutch and English followed in the 16th century in a commercial expansion or continuation of what the Hanseatic League had fostered since the Middle Ages. In 1600, the Honourable East India Company was founded. And in 1602, the Dutch VOC, their own East India Company, followed suit. These companies' explorations and route establishment was funded both privately and at times underwritten by the government, though they were granted and exercised their own powers to form a semblance of a truly global society centered around commerce. In 1615, a treaty was concluded opening the ports of India to Great Britain. France, however, its finances ravaged by the 30 Years' War, lacked the funding and initiative to take on the financially and organizationally powerful VOC and EIC. Though some intrepid French explorers had tried, Henry IV was very interested in extending France's interests in foreign lands. In December 1600, an association was formed through the cooperation of the cities of Saint-Malo, Laval, and Vitré to trade with Malacca and Japan. In 1601, two ships, the Croissant and the Corbin, were sent around the Cape of Good Hope. In the interest of adventure, two men survived to write about their adventures on these ships, the Corbin being wrecked in the Maldives, and one of its passengers, François Pirard, managed to return to France in 1611 and write about his experiences. The Croissant actually reached Sumatra and Ceylon, but was captured by the Dutch on the return. And at Cap Finisterre, François Martin de Vitré, the Croissant's surgeon, survived and wrote an account of his travels to the Far East in 1604, published at the request of Henry, who was becoming more and more interested in the East as a trade prospect. attracted by François Martin's published accounts. From 1604, Henry began to establish the Compagnie Française pour le commerce des Indes orientales on the model of England and the Netherlands, but funded entirely by the monarch. He issued letters patent to form the Dieppe Company, giving them exclusive rights to Asian trade for 15 years. However, no ships were sent until 1616. Later, Cardinal Richelieu, among his many achievements, began work to strengthen and modernize Le Havre as a defensive port, and in 1643 his Compagnie de l'Orient, founded the previous year, began to call it home. Despite its monopoly, Richelieu's colonization policies saw this company entangled in problems surrounding its planned Indian Ocean station in Madagascar, and it was unable to meet demands for Indian textiles on which the EIC and VOC were able to capitalize. In 1661, Louis named Jean-Baptiste Colbert Minister of Finance. In one of his many roles as Secretary of State for the Navy, Colbert oversaw France's industrial, colonial, and commercial development, and founded the first large-scale French company for maritime commerce. In a royal decree of 27 August 1664, Louis granted to Colbert's company a 50-year monopoly of trade with the East, the right of ownership of occupied lands, the right of sovereign jurisdiction, the right to mint coins, to establish garrisons, to arm warships, and to trade, privileges that extended from the coasts of Africa to Japan, including Madagascar and the Mascarene Islands, the coasts of the Red Sea, Malabar, Bengal, and China, from the Cape of Good Hope to the Straits of Magellan. Louis also granted a concession in perpetuity for the lands of Madagascar, as well as Bourbon and the Ile-de-France, modern-day Réunion and Mauritius, where company ports were soon established. The company's strength lay in the balance of government control and independent trade, but Colbert had been unable to attract enough backing from merchants, and much of its funding relied on the royal coffers in Versailles. As a result, it suffered financially during the Franco-Dutch War of 1672-78, the War of the League of Augsburg, 1688-97, and the War of the Spanish Succession, 1701-1714, and after Louis's death in 1683. Private trade, however, flourished, though it was regulated by the company, and a private consortium organized the first successful voyage to China in 1698. Many private ventures were organized and funded by investors in Saint-Malo and Paris. The company's headquarters had never been in one place. It had a seat in Paris in the Rue de Richelieu, now part of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, with no direct access to the sea. As early as 1662, a site had been sought that would accommodate a port and shipyards for the growing company. After considering places such as Bayonne and Le Havre, Port Louis presented itself as the perfect site, and in 1666 it became designated for that purpose. Located at the delta formed by the mouths of the rivers Blavet and Scorff, protected from the west winds by the Ile-de-Croix, its entrance overseen by the 16th century citadel, it was a perfect location to house the largest navy of the era. Unlike the ports in the Channel, this Atlantic port was better protected from English and Dutch attacks, and was closer to the military ports of Brest and Rochefort, and the large commercial port of Nantes. The company built its own ships there in the vast shipyards, equipped its vessels, stored merchandise, and conducted sales in the town. Workers began to build their homes around the shipyard site, as well as adding infrastructure of the company, and this was the beginning of the city of Lorient. Lorient took its name from the first ship that was built by the company, the Soleil d'Orient, of 1,000 tons and 60 guns, that had the nickname of L'Orient. Lorient today holds a lot of good memories for me, because it's also a sailing hub. The river mouths form a lovely harbor, and there's some big marinas there. And I have a lot of good memories of sailing out of Lorient into the Bay of Biscay, Ile-de-Groix, Belle-Île, La Rochelle, and out to the very westernmost parts of Brittany. The French East Indies Company, however, was struggling financially, and in 1706 it passed into the hands of Saint-Malo shipowners, who were able to bail it out of debt. By the time of the French Regency, the company was facing financial ruin, and the Scotsman, financier John Law, proposed a bold plan to address the country's debt. He created the Royal Bank, a gold and silver depository able to issue paper banknotes pledged on the profits of the company's commercial enterprise, paying off France's national debt. He then merged all of the companies, including the West Indies Company, with commercial privileges together into one entity, the Compagnies des Indes, as part of the Royal Bank in 1719. Many were seduced by the exaggerated prospects of trade with Louisiana, Canada, and the Caribbean, over which the Compagnies were granted a monopoly in trade, including the tremendously lucrative tobacco. This speculation, along with hyperinflation, resulted in the company's bankruptcy. Despite that, it was now in the possession of a new fleet of ships, as well as territories and trade monopolies in North America, Africa, and the Indian Ocean. The Compagnie des Indes was reorganized in the 1720s and continued to hold a monopoly over much of the North American trade. Always plagued by problems of colonization and financial backing, it finally ceded its North American possessions, including Louisiana, to the Crown in 1731. Despite difficulty due to the War of the Austrian Succession from 1740 to 1748, the company was also able to expand trade with China and India, growing to rival the EIC. However, the company could not withstand the financial blows inflicted by the 7 Years' War, 1756 to 63, which consolidated British imperial power on the Indian subcontinent. Despite this ignominious end, the company had succeeded in reducing the national debt by 40% and in funding itself. The company was abolished in 1769, and Louis XVI issued an edict requiring the company to transfer to the state all its properties, assets, as Exchequer of the Kingdom of France, reformed the Compagnies des Indes, though without as many privileges and power of its predecessors. The king agreed to pay all of the company's debts and obligations, though stockholders received only about 15% of the face value of their investments in the end, a hard lesson also faced by the British government's bailout of the EIC. Events, as often do, overtook things, and in 1790 the National Assembly abolished the monopoly and extended commerce beyond the Cape of Good Hope to everyone, and liquidated the Compagnie. In its prime, the Compagnie's bases of trade in Asia included Malabar, Bengal, and Canton in China, and it established a headquarters in Surat and then Pondicherry, acquired in 1674 in India, south of what is now Madras, where the EIC had its headquarters, as well as Bengal for silk, cotton, calico, muslin, but also saltpeter and opium, and Tamai for pepper. This area bore a French presence for the next 3 centuries. However, with the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713, the VOC withdrew to Indonesia, leaving trade with India to the French and British companies, and beginning a long rivalry that would encompass diplomatic and political relations in Europe and abroad. The Compagnie began to seek alliances further south in India, and as the Mughal Empire declined under British pressure, but the Compagnie's influence shrunk to only a few ports after the defeat by Britain's Robert Clive. The grand shipyards planned for Lorient and the Company were never finished, and sat for centuries after the Revolution, quietly in Lorient, bowing to the big port of Nantes. However, it did keep somewhat of a military presence. In World War II, Lorient was occupied by 25,000 Nazi troops, and a Nazi submarine base was also built there, and still exists, with its block cement as part of the Atlantic seawall defense system. Lorient surrendered on the 10th of May, 1945. I hope that you have enjoyed hearing the story of the French East India Companies, and that you have found the time in the study relaxing. Thank you for stopping by and having tea with me and sharing some of my memories and some history. Maybe you've been able to relax, to get away from your troubles for a while, maybe even to fall asleep. Wherever you are, whenever you are, be very, very good to yourself. Be kind, and as always,